What is up, YouTube? It's Yu-Gi-Oh House. I'm bringing you guys today an Eldlich deck profile. This deck has brought me to several tops now at locals. Not only that, several first place finishes. It's the deck I'm taking to the OTS championship later this month. Stay tuned. Let's go ahead and get into this deck profile. We have to start off with the main man himself. Obviously this deck would not function without Eldlich, and it could get away with playing one. In my opinion, I think is way too risky, especially with how prevalent DD Crow is in this format to stop things like the Tearlament plays. So if you're not playing two, you're running a major risk. Next, for our Elixir spells, I run just the singular Black Awakening. I don't run White Destiny. I think that White Destiny is a bit more situational, especially because you need that Eldlich in hand. Black Awakening is a much better card in my opinion, and I feel like it's a bit necessary, especially since I don't play Curse the Eldland. I think the card is not very good going first, so Black Awakening is definitely a card that will set up combos and can push past things like Branded Fusion getting ashed. Next, of course, I run 3 Elixir of Scarlet Sanguine. It's definitely the best of the Elixirs. Elixir of Scarlet Sanguine, I mean, just takes the cake. It's such a good card. Being able to recycle golden land scraps, can't really ask for more. There's a lot of recursion that's involved with this card. This card is freaking awesome. I really don't think that there's a way to play this deck without this card at 3. Next, Conquistador of the Golden Land. I know this card is limited to 1 in Master Duel, and to be honest, it's for a good reason. This card is so powerful. Non-targeting destruction off a card that you can search. It's very powerful. And finally, to round off our golden lands, we have 3 Hakero. Hakero is very prevalent now in today's meta because of Tearlaments. It's what's helped me to a lot of those victories at the OTS because of how prevalent Tearlaments is. Hakero being able to non-target banish and it not necessarily relying on a when effect. Hakero really stands out in this meta. Next, the best starter we have in the deck, Branded Fusion. Hands down, the absolute best starter in this deck. You want to max it out because you want to see it going first, you want to see it going second, but we got some really spicy techs in this side deck that this card is great to have, but it's not necessary. Next, just the 1 Fallen of Albaz. You only need the 1. In my opinion, I do run the Dear Servant, so you will be able to recur it and in some sort of capacity. But in terms of going first, Fallen of Albaz, drawing into it is terrible, absolutely terrible. You're not able to fill up that back row and really capitalize on those powerful spells and traps. Next, we got the best board breaker in today's meta in Super Poly. Garura is a card now. I don't know what Konami was thinking when they made Garura, but it handles those sprite boards so easily and so consistently. Being able to get into Garura, being able to draw a card when it's sent to grave is so powerful, especially in a trap-based deck with how limited the searching is in this deck. It's so necessary. So I think Super Poly maxing out at 3 in the main board, I think is very justified. Next, we have the 1 Dogmatika Ecclesia the Virtuous. It's the last monster I've committed to the main deck. I think it was just so powerful. It's been so powerful. Being able to search Dogmatika Punishment and the way it interacts with Nadir Servant, it's too good. It has such a comfortable spot in this deck. I have not thought about cutting this card, nor have I thought about cutting Nadir Servant or Dogmatika Punishment. They all facilitate so much advantage that Dogmatika Ecclesia genuinely has such a solid slot in this deck. Nadir Servant, it's a shame it's limited to 2. You would want to run 3 because it is so powerful. Being able to send Garura now to draw a card going first or going second, helping you break board, sending in Tis to search for Ecclesia, which will get you another pop. A very powerful spell, and I think it's way too good not to run. Of course, the cards before complement Dogmatika Punishment so well. You really don't need to run it at 3. It is very powerful, but you don't want it to clog your hand. It is a hard once per turn. You don't want to be setting 2 of this card. You won't be able to activate it in the same turn. It does get a bit clunky with Branded Fusion, so maxing out this card, in my opinion, isn't very necessary. Moving on to one of the most powerful spells in today's game, Out of Prosperity. This card is insane. I think just about every time I resolve this card, I win the duel. I'm not going to lie, digging 6 deep in a trap deck where you can have your pick at your Eldlich engine, your Branded Fusion engine, your Dogmatika engine, all the floodgates you run, Pot of Prosperity feels so necessary in a deck like this where you lack consistency. Of course, you run the one called by the grave. It's so powerful in today's meta. Not only can you disrupt tier limit plays, but protect your own plays. Called by the grave has to be one of the most insane spell cards ever printed. Next, I have a bit of a tech that I've been running in this deck and has served me very, very well in terms of competitive play in today's meta against TEARLAMENTS, against Branded, is Gravedigger's Trap Hole. This card, even though it's a when effect, comes in so clutch in so many games. Unfortunately, with the time rules, this card does help you win a lot of games in time. Burning for 4,000 is no joke. Burning for 4,000 will absolutely win you a game, especially with how much life points Sprite players are playing and all the crazy techs they have sending to grave like Ronin Totem. You're gonna be able to get Trap Hole off very easily against matchups like I said, Sprite, TEARLAMENTS, and Branded. Branded really gets hit super heavy by Trap Hole. I am running a 40 card deck, so unfortunately Anti-Spell Fragrance did get cut to 2. It is a very, very powerful trap card. Of course, it shines going first, so this card usually gets sided out in games 2 and 3, depending on whether I'm going first. Obviously, I would leave it in because it's so powerful. It just felt like really needed something to stop Runic players from activating all those spell cards on their turn. I'd rather them have to wait to activate it on my turn and lose essentially a turn of spells. Same thing with Branded players, same thing with Sprite players. I want to force you to play on my turn. Next, we have one of the most powerful floodgates in today's meta, and there can be only one. This is very, very killer against Math Mech and those Adignister rogue strategies that have been coming up. This just destroys any sort of rogue deck that is trying to compete at your locals. This will get you the free dub. You flip this on even Sprite players and they're gonna have a very, very hard time playing the game. And our last floodgate, Skill Drain. I mean, what more can I say? Paying 1,000 life points to negate everything on field has never felt so sweet. This card is at 3. It is insane. This card steals you so many games, especially against Sprite players that really need those on-field effects to combo off. And the last trap card that we have in our deck, Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is insane. Solemn Strike comes in so clutch against so many of today's meta matchups. It's so oppressive, and just for 1,500 life points, being able to negate a summon, it's too powerful. Alright guys, that's a 40 card deck. Now moving on to the extra deck. One of the better super poly targets in today's meta, Muddragon of the Swamp. It helps protect your board from being targeted. You can call light if you have an Eldlich heavy board, or dark if you really don't want your Mirror Jade to get banished or anything like that, being destroyed by any sort of card effect where it targets. You need that body, Muddragon of the Swamp is there. Elder Entity Natis feels like the unsung hero of this extra deck. It's so powerful and it's sometimes so overlooked. I never banish this card off Prosperity. Whether I'm going first, whether I'm going second, Elder Entity Natis is just way too powerful. That extra pop off of things like Dogmatika Punishment, a way to start your Nadir Servant combo with a pop. It's just so great. It's so powerful. Again, I'll say it, Garura has to be easily the best super poly target ever printed. Garura is so amazing. Not only can you use it as a super poly target against decks like Sprite, TEARLAMENTS, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Garura is insanely generic. Not only that, you're sending it off Nadir Servant to draw a card. You're sending it to search for a card that's going to pop you a card. That's going to potentially draw you a card or pop you a card, because this is, of course, a Dogmatika punishment target if the attack is low enough. It is insane. Garura adds a whole layer of consistency to this deck that was never there before. Another very solid super poly target is Credit Plant Dragostapelia. This comes up a bit more in the Tearlament matchup, especially when they're branching off into things like Mud Dragon of the Swamp or a Dragostapelia of their own. You usually don't want to fuse their Tearlament monsters. You don't want them to hit the grave. And I don't even think you can use Kaleido Heart. I think Kaleido Heart cannot be used as fusion material. So Dragostapelia does feel a bit more situational, but when you do summon him, he's so powerful. That negate is so clutch. I mean, it feels like it definitely has a home in this deck and has proved itself to be very good. Moving on to my branded engine, Albion and Lubellion are your combo starters. They're the ones that get you into those bigger fusion boss monsters. However, Albion really facilitates sending Eldlich to grave. Not being able to get that Mirror Jade does hurt, but the fact that you're able to mill Eldlich off a spell card that you can play at 3, you really can't ask for more. And of course, speaking of boss monsters, Mirror Jade the Ice Blade Dragon, Titaniclad the Ash Dragon, two very, very heavy cards. Titaniclad I use mostly if I'm trying to evade things like Zeus, evade things like a Barone, and just trying to beat over it. Titaniclad is definitely the better option. However, Mirror Jade, putting that up on your first turn, setting up a banish, it's just way too powerful. A lot of decks, you'd be surprised, have their entire combo ruined by a choke point being banished. Next, I run a very, very small link package, just 2 monsters, one being Link Spider and Lina the Light Charmer. Lina just feels so necessary in this deck, of course, to mill that, to get that Eldlich from field to grave, and Link Spider getting those Conquistadors or those Hakeros into grave feels so powerful. Lina is very good this format. There are a lot of light monsters being played. Even Effect Veiler is getting played a lot nowadays. So Lina the Light Charmer doesn't feel as situational as she did before. Next, you definitely need a OTK line in this deck. If you can put both Golden Lords on the field, you have access to not only burning your opponent for 2,000, but then swinging for 6,000 with Lieb. Gustav, Max, and Lieb feel so important in this deck, especially to get over things like AI Arrival. I think that might be the card's name. It's the Link 6 and the Cyburst deck. Man, that card is insane. Being able to trade with it, at least you got rid of the issue, and you're able to deal with the coming combos with your 4 to 5 trap cards that were set. And of course, the absolute spice. This deck would not function without Stardust Dragon. I know that sounds insane, but Stardust Dragon has honestly been so good to me. I've special summoned this card on a Flunder player who managed to get the Wind Barrier lock on me. He was beating me down, I had nothing to summon. He gets greedy, he tries to Heartbeat, boom, Stardust Dragon for your stupid ass. Alright guys, let's get into this side deck. The side deck is really where the heavy hitters come in. This is where the deck feels like it really is leaps and bounds ahead of other control decks because of how many options it has in the side deck. Your opponent feels like they never know what to expect. They don't know what to plan. They're putting in cards in their side deck that aren't even gonna mess with you. And let's start that off with 3 Lava Golem. Lava Golem is absolutely killer this format. It's a crime to be able to get rid of 2 monsters on your opponent's field for absolutely free. Putting this up on the board, you're not worried about outing it. Even if you don't out it, it's burning your opponent for 1,000. Unfortunately, with the time rules, I have won games where I burn my opponent with Lava Golem for game. It is insane. Next, I do run 2 Raw Sphere Mode. I think the card is too necessary not to play. Of course, being able to play Lava Golem is great, but Sphere Mode is the cherry on top of siding in 5 cards, plus your 2 prosperities to dig even deeper. You're gonna be able to see those huge board breaking cards that are absolutely unfair. Because of how prevalent Mystic Mine and other Eldlich variants are, I do run 2 Lightning Storm. This card catches so many people off guard going second that a lot of people aren't prepared for it. They aren't prepared to have their entire board nuked, whether that be their monsters or their back row, depending on what is heavier. This card is so versatile, it feels so necessary in this side deck. I know a lot of you guys were wondering, why the 1 Albaz? Well, that's because in games 2 and 3, if I'm going first, I'm siding that engine out and I'm putting an Inspector border. This card is killer. This card absolutely destroys Tearlament. I have yet to face a Tearlament player who has even attempted to play through my set 4, set 5 normal summon Inspector border. They just straight up scoop. They do not like this card. If they don't open up instant fusion, there's absolutely nothing they can do, and you're just beating down with Inspector border for 2k. So I know I keep mentioning those horrible time rules. Time rules have been a plague in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's why I don't play Cursed Eldland. I've lost games paying a simple 800 life points because of those time rules. Mystic Mine is so prevalent, it takes full advantage of those foolish time rules. So playing cards like Solemn Judgment to counter things like Harpies or Lightning Storm or Twin Twisters, in my opinion, is way too risky. Especially since you're not getting into that Solemn Judgment until games 2 and 3, and game 1 usually goes for a while because people are thinking a lot on how to act through the floodgates, how to play through those insane negates. Starlight Road has become a staple in this deck. Stardust Dragon is insane. Being able to DPE style revive that card, constantly using its effect to protect my floodgates. Stardust Dragon is absolutely mandatory in my opinion in this deck. It's what's led me to so many victories at the OTS, and it's what I hope is going to lead me to victory at the OTS Championship later this month. Make sure you guys stay tuned. And to round off the deck, of course, I run 2 D barriers, with fusion decks running rampant, synchro decks being a heavy hitter. It is so important to have dimensional barrier. Being able to call Xyz on Sprite decks, they're just gonna scoop. They're not gonna be able to put up a board with enough negates to be able to play through things like Branded Fusion getting activated when they pass turn, getting into the Eldlich engine, which is so much damage, and potentially putting up Leeb. Come on. D-Barrier is mandatory this format. So I brought you guys full power Eldlich. You guys absolutely loved that last Eldlich deck profile, and this time I brought it back. Absolutely killer with first place finishes, several tops at my locals, and hopefully we can take home that championship for Yu-Gi-Oh! House later this month. Please guys, stay tuned. Is Eldlich gonna get checked on this ban list? I guess we'll see. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! House. Peace!